what I would tell anyone who is worried about being their true authentic self is that those who are not meant for us have never been meant for us. And so when you finally come forward and say the radical, political, necessary thing that needs to be said, I think about the individual who will be so greatly impacted with that statement in a good way. Like, wow, finally, I feel so validated by seeing this on a therapist's Instagram, for example.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Sonalee Rashatwar, a social worker, activist, and public speaker based in Philadelphia who works primarily with sexual trauma, internalized fatphobia, and immigrant kid guilt. I was so excited to talk to Sonalee because I've been learning from them and inspired by them for a while, and I knew she would have wisdom to share about being public with views that are seen as radical and edgy. As many of the therapists and other healers I work with step into work that is anti-oppression or even just work that's outside the mainstream, they are feeling the fear. These therapists and healers fear judgment from their peers and from their potential clients and from that unknown they. They also fear loss of income. Sonalee has been through real, measurable loss of income and came through it. She shares that story with us. As you're getting ready to grow your following and put yourself out there in a bigger and even braver way, it is so helpful to hear the truth from someone who's been there. Another topic I loved exploring in this conversation is capitalism. Sonalee's way of thinking about capitalism really resonated with me, especially the ideas they shared about how they resist some of the most toxic messages capitalism encourages us to believe. Okay, let's dive right in. Welcome, Sonalee. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So I've been following you and learning from you and hearing parts of your story. And I'm, like I said, so excited to talk to you. And I haven't gotten to hear yet a lot about your thoughts about business and your experience with business. And I know that lots of our listeners are already going to know you and some won't know you yet. So will you tell us about some of the many areas where your work intersects?
Yeah, definitely. Before I do, I just want to say, huge fan of the show. So honored to be here. And so right now I am a co-business owner of the private practice Radical Therapy Center. And my business partner, Khaled Asethi, and I, we both are LCSWs, living and working in Philadelphia, where our primary client population are queer and trans folks of color. So we are serving the population that we belong to, which sometimes can be a little tricky. We struggle with dual relationships a lot of times because the community is so small. So as a business owner, that's not only where my income comes from. I also do a lot of freelancing. And it's a significant enough portion of my income that it's probably maybe not half, but it's maybe 40 or 30 to 40%, which is a pretty large chunk. And my bread and butter is Monday through Friday, I right now see about 25 clients in a week. And they're all private pay clients. So we don't take insurance. I don't take insurance at Radical Therapy Center. And my freelancing work, I try to leave towards the end of the week on Thursdays and Fridays, where I receive opportunities from universities and local organizations, sex toy companies that are hosting retreats a couple of states away, so like within driving distance, universities just across the border in Canada, who would like a keynote about body positivity, for example. So my work takes me to a lot of places where I meet really interesting people. And also, I meet interesting people here in Philadelphia at my practice too.
Okay, awesome. How would you describe, I would love to talk to you about your journey to where you are now and where you're interested in going. So, so right now you're running your practice and then you're also doing these other things. And so what I know about so far is speaking engagements and workshops on that other side. So can you tell us a little bit about the workshops you run as well?
I've come to the work of therapy by falling into it. So it's not like I was 10 years old and I knew I wanted to be a social worker. It was that I had a friend who was in the sex therapy program that I ended up applying to in 2012. And I had learned for the first time what social work was and how I could get a job anywhere. I could work in a hospital if I wanted to. I could work overseas if I wanted to with those kind of skills. I could be a community organizer, or I could do clinical work, which is what I really was interested in because I had been doing some really affirming, validating, fulfilling volunteer work for a couple of years before I had this chance conversation with a friend. And that work involved being a member of a domestic violence response team. So while I was living in South Jersey, I was responding to calls in the middle of the night, often asking me to respond to police stations or hospitals after someone had been sexually assaulted or when they were possibly requesting more information about getting a restraining order. And so what I discovered in doing that volunteer work was I really enjoyed doing it. I never dreaded getting those phone calls at 2 a.m. And what I was trained to do was offer like a really succinct, 20-minute conversation where I was offering resources to whomever needed them. But in practice, what I was actually doing was sitting with these individuals for sometimes an hour or two, talking about all the things that have brought them to this place and this moment of making a big decision and the very complicated reasons why many of these like undocumented or poor Black single moms couldn't get the restraining order that they might have wanted because of many other mitigating factors. And I realized that I enjoyed that work. I was good at it. I could provide like a stillness for us to contemplate. And I was grounded in that I felt safe enough for folks to cry with. And that was how I stumbled into social work, just totally by chance. And a lot of the workshops that I provide also feel like I've been intuitively drawn to that work in similar ways. Because what's so interesting about how I have become radicalized over the last decade of my life was by applying theory, like these big abstract concepts, to my lived experiences. And we all do this. This is why many of us go to therapy school, to better understand the things that we've experienced. And that is much of what my workshops do, that I'm applying these ideas about desirability politics and how capitalism determines a person's aesthetic worth based on their like ability to produce profit and capital under this racialized capital system, and how when we internalize that, we believe these lies that I am only as valuable as I am productive under capitalism. And so I use my lived experiences of being put on non-consensual diets as a child to better understand how was my attachment disrupted as a youth in living in an upper middle class home where there was food abundance, but why did I experience food scarcity in a way that was different from my younger siblings based on my body size and my gender and my place in the sibling order? So using my lived experiences is what goes into those workshops when we like deconstruct diet culture, or we try to learn how to unlearn fat phobia and apply like these lenses of capitalism or desirability politics to understand why fat phobia is important to include on a list of isms that we're going to try to no longer be doing.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're really walking people through how fat phobia intersects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can I ask you about capitalism?
You sure can.
So, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this recently, especially in learning from you, this idea of that, we are valuable as long as we are productive. We are valuable to the extent that we are productive in creating profit. And that's kind of what we learn that our bodies are for. And this really brings up something that a lot of people in my community struggle with in terms of when the profit you're creating is for yourself. Like, what kind of business do you want to create? And how, within a fucked up system, how to like feel good as an entrepreneur. So I'm just wondering what kind of thoughts you have about that.
It's so tough when we want to dismantle capitalism to still need to require to ask those we serve to pay us what we fairly deserve, especially when those we serve are often multiply marginalized, maybe even in more ways than I am as a clinician, speaking as a clinician. And I have to remind myself, I am not a capitalist. I am not Jeff Bezos.
Mm-hmm.
I am not hoarding billions of dollars. I am not unfairly exploiting wage laborers and not giving them adequate working conditions. That's not what I'm doing. And when I ask for a client to be able to compensate me fairly, I offer a sliding scale. And there's actually a really great financial advisor who I just started following, who I feel offers us this like anti-capitalist framework for understanding how we still have to survive within capitalism. And her handle is Ride Free Fearless Money. And it's spelled just like it sounds. And she calls herself a hacking capitalism educator. And what she talks about is having us remember that we still have to have an emergency fund. We still have to have a savings account. We still have to prepare for possible retirement depending on where we are within our developmental life cycle. For many of us in our 30s and 40s, that might not even be a possibility with the way that late stage capitalism is looking in the next 20 to 30 years. And that's scary for a lot of us. And then on top of that, folks with debt, on top of that, folks with long-term relationships and children and taking care of aging parents, it becomes more complicated. But back to your original question on capitalism. I feel like I have to reassure myself the same way that I reassure my clients who struggle with exactly the same concept. This idea that, well, I shouldn't rest and I don't have a hobby. And why don't I have a hobby? And these are the same things that I struggle with. That do I have work that I do for fun that is not something that could supplement my CV? And the answer is no. I don't really have anything like that right now, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And that's inherently anti-capitalist. It's inherently this understanding that I can develop a skill that might never become something that I can like hack into becoming profitable, that I can sell. And every hour of my day is not dedicated to profit creation.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Every moment is not dedicated to productivity, to monetizing, that I'm valuable as a human being. And like these moments are valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing I'm so excited to talk to you about is I work with a lot of clients who are feeling, and I'm talking about not therapy clients, but my clients who are therapists, my coaching clients, who are feeling a ton of fear and anxiety that's quite realistic because as they're getting more public about their anti-oppression work and coming out more in their identities or talking about their identities, they're fearing judgment and experiencing judgment and are also fearing loss of income. So I'm wondering if you have struggled with that and how you've moved with that.
100% I have. and it's over my views on white supremacy and Palestine.
Mm.
And I think a little bit nudity too, like the double standard around fat nudity. So, like, these are three things. What I've experienced around the backlash of talking publicly about Palestine, though, feels different from what I've experienced about talking about white supremacy or even the double standard of having posed for photos for an anal sex toy company where my nude backside was showing. And what I would tell anyone who is worried about being their true authentic self is that those who are not meant for us have never been meant for us. And so when you finally come forward and say the radical, political, necessary thing that needs to be said, I think about the individual who will be so greatly impacted with that statement in a good way. Like, wow, finally, I feel so validated by seeing this on a therapist's Instagram, for example. I feel like, wow, I never realized that I would need a therapist who believes these things. I would need a therapist who shares these really important ethical and moral values that I hold in order for me to like attach and open up to them and feel secure and safe and vulnerable. So I feel like we have to be politicizing our therapy more because actually there is, and not just for like our own self-fulfillment reasons, but like there's a market for it. These are what consumers and what my activist clients are so desperate for. In fact, we just opened Radical Therapy Center, Khalida and I, in June. I had a full caseload by July, and I can no longer accept new clients, and we cannot even meet the demand that we're going to be expanding in January and hopefully bringing on 4 or 5 new therapists who we can train in how to politicize therapy under us, if they're not already doing that, which some of them are. It's hugely in demand. It's almost like, the way I understand it is like it's a new religion. Politics are like a new religion, and there's like good and bad, and we need therapists who understand like how to undo some of the black and white thinking the same way we would with any other some type of like religious fundamentalism. And that's not to criticize my clients if any of them are listening. And to go back to your question again, because now we've gone off topic. This happened to me around Zionist backlash starting around January. And I had by chance posted something about Palestine, which I do regularly. Like, it was not out of the ordinary that I would post something and that I would connect it to body image, because that's often what I'm trying to do, is trying to help apoliticized or depoliticized body positivity folks try to remember that this was originally a political movement and that we have to always be like forcing the conversation into a political arena so that it doesn't become like fluffy and about self-love in this very like navel gazy way that's very first world and not actually considering the global consequences of that. And what I was doing in that conversation was I was like adding to an Instagram story highlight, which is still on my Instagram story. I'm sorry, on my Instagram page, about Palestine, talking about how colonialism and body image are connected and why it's important for us to talk about Palestine as a body image issue. And I guess a couple of Zionists caught wind of that. And a Zionist is just someone who believes in the Israeli state existing, and sometimes at the expense of Palestinians who have had land dispossessed and experienced ethnic genocide because of that. And in talking about Palestine, what I experienced was someone creating, and I still don't know who, someone had created a fake Instagram direct message conversation as if I had been talking to this person.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so what I can surmise is that they might have used an app like Prankgram, which is what a follower had told me, this is how you can easily create it. You can make it look like you had a conversation with Rihanna if you want to. It says something that looks like I was for the Jewish Holocaust, as if I said, yes, I think that that should have continued happening. I think that more Jewish people should have died, which is appalling. I would never say such a thing. And I do not believe such a thing. And so what had happened from there was screenshots were taken of that message, videos were taken of that message. And what was spread around was that I was anti Semitic. And so a lot of the educating work that I've been doing since then is also helping my followers to understand the difference between being critical of Zionism and being anti Semitic, which are two different things. And anti Semitism is the discrimination of Jewish people. And anti Zionism is being critical of the Israeli state. So these are two really different things. And what has happened since then is that Zionists organized, meaning they had messaged each other, or maybe there was like big Instagram accounts that everyone was following to get information about what to do and how to organize. And they had contacted the Pennsylvania State Social Work Board to let them know that I had made anti-Semitic comments, or that they had proof that I did, which I didn't. And it led to a full investigation. They were not going to approve my license until the investigation was completed. I had to hire an attorney. I was unable to practice in Pennsylvania for a period of like 5 months until the case cleared up, until the investigation cleared up. And I lost income, and I lost all that rent that I had to pay on this office that we had just rented. And eventually the investigation cleared up because there was no real proof there. And I still don't regret talking about Palestine.
Yeah.
And I still talk about Palestine because what that showed me was that I touched a nerve, and I was always this political. I'd had a following on Facebook before I had shifted over to Instagram. And it was like a meager following, but many of the folks who I was in community with on social media were doing similar digital activism, where we're doing radical educating by sharing articles, talking about commentary, and expanding our understanding of what is justice beyond looking at like the US democratic system and thinking more radically and about a broader global liberation politic. And I'd never not talking about Palestine, and I'll never stop because of that.
And you lost really concrete, measurable income.
Yeah, absolutely I did. And I'll never be able to know how much income from potential gigs that I've lost, but I know that I have not lost gigs that I had booked and confirmed. And what happens is that group of Zionists will reach out to groups that I have publicly said I'm working with, and will let them know about this evidence. And so I'll have to talk to that group and let them know this is like not true. There's like a whole spiel that I copy and paste so that they know. And so if folks are worried about that backlash, I want to let folks know that we can't be afraid of someone disagreeing with us, and we can't be afraid of the potential negative consequences, even when they're really bad, because I still had other jobs that I was working. I still had some income. I still was able to support myself. I learned many important coping skills. Being under this pressure from the Zionists pushed me finally to go into therapy, where I was like developing all kinds of important conflict resolutions and like resolution skills and anxiety management tools and distress tolerance and extremely important stuff.
Yeah. Did you lean on like a core community during that time?
You know what? Yeah, I did, because there was some fear of doxing at the time. And doxing is when someone publicly releases your personal information, like address, home phone number, address of your parents, and things like that, which is something that I do not want to have happen. So I knew the right people to contact when it happened. And I have friends who work in digital security. And so they let me know, reach out to Privacy Duck. They will wipe your personal information off the internet. It's expensive, but it's worth it. For anyone doing digital activism, unfortunately, this is just a reality of being a digital activist in 2019, that we sometimes have to use services like that so that our safety is maintained. And that's like a yearly service that I'll have to have forever.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That leads me to another question I was going to ask you, because you have, as we're recording, somewhere around 87,000 Instagram followers. And you obviously use that platform really thoughtfully and you put energy into it and you use it as a tool for activism. Can you tell us anything more about how you kind of protect yourself or manage your energy around that? I noticed you have DMs closed, which I would imagine is completely necessary at that point.
And it does nothing. People still send DMs.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's not some secret switch that I have that no one else has.
You don't get to toggle that off. Okay.
I wish. I mean, so this is a great question because it took me a lot of time to learn how to structure those boundaries in ways that felt good. And I also experienced this like slow, like gradual, but also like a fast gradual blow up in that Instagram page, which was my personal account. Like if you scroll down enough, you will see photos of like food that I've eaten on a Tuesday afternoon that looked really pretty and delicious. And so things that I've done since this backlash was I've actually had to go through to the very beginning of my timeline and remove photos of my family. And you can simply archive them so that they still exist within your Instagram record, but do not exist for public viewing. I also no longer post on my public pages Instagram story about where I am in real time.
Ah, yeah.
So I'll post after the case and I'll post, even if it's like an hour or two, but I'll take photos or videos and post after the case. And the other thing that's been really helpful is having my own personal Instagram that's like private. And if you have clients that are youth, you know that they're called Finsta accounts, meaning fake Instagram. And they're often places where young people will put their like really personal, very vulnerable feelings. And that is where I put my personal vulnerable feelings with people who I know in real life, who, when I post about a difficult day that I had in therapy and that I want to talk it out with somebody, I know that folks who read that, a couple, will be able to reach out to me and check on me. And so what that also does is keep me off of the public page, because on the public page is where I also get really hateful DMs, like mean, unnecessarily cruel, fatphobic, racist, terrible things. And it keeps me out of there. So I have my own space that I curate. I can like all the like problematic gay, lesbian, mean pages that I want to follow. I can follow these like satisfying sand cutting pages, and it's a great space.
Excellent. A nice safe space. Future Annie jumping in real quick. If you want to take your work beyond the therapy room and create the program that will launch the next phase of your business, join me for a 2-day online workshop. This is the process that will set you up to expand your business, make more money, and a much bigger impact. Let's shorten your learning curve and get started now. Learn more and apply at rebeltherapist.me. Okay, let's get back to Sonalee. And you work with an assistant, right?
Yes, I do.
Does that person also help filter through things before you see them in terms of like email or other places in your digital life?
She does. And then I also have it on my phone. So sometimes I still see them, even though the whole point was that I shouldn't see them. But yeah, we have got like a cataloging system. So as the emails come in, she'll be able to like mark it with the label of hate mail, and then it gets automatically archived in a separate folder should I ever need that for any reason. But I wouldn't automatically see it.
Okay. I think this is going to be so helpful for people who are wanting to build audiences and are going to be stepping into more and more of these problems as they do it. It's just so invaluable.
If anything, for folks who are worried, if anything, if you say that bold, provocative thing, you touch important cultural buttons that need to be touched and desensitized, first of all. And second of all, the folks who you are not for, they're going to learn that right away. And it's not going to be that they followed you for a whole year and they were like, what? I'm so shocked by this, which was the struggle with apolitical body positivity. Apolitical Bopo followed my page thinking I was like some fluffy person, okay about self-aggrandizement without like self-accountability. And I'm not. And then they got surprised. And now they really know. And now they're fully informed in their consent when they sign up to follow me, because now they really know.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a way, the sooner the better.
Right?
Excellent. So, okay. There's something that I've really enjoyed you talking about boring self-care.
Yeah.
And so, with that brilliant idea in mind, there's a question that my listeners have told me that they love it when I ask this, even though it could be seen as kind of mundane. So, are you willing to share with us things like what time you get up, if you have any morning rituals, and what you would say about kind of how you spend a typical day or week?
Totally. I love this question. Boring self-care is a great concept that I learned from the Instagram account Make Daisy Chains. And she's like a comic artist, and she writes all kinds of like simple everyday things like taking your medicine as boring self-care, but it deserves celebration the same way. So a typical morning routine, some things that I've been doing lately in therapy are inner child work and reparenting work. And so what I've been working on lately is like keeping one promise to myself every day. And the one promise that I'm working on right now is waking up at my first alarm and not hitting the snooze button. And so my alarm is typically set on a day about 3 hours before I have to be in the office. And usually my first client is at about 10 because I am not a morning person. I like to be in my home in the morning, just not outside the home. And so I'll wake up around 7, and I love the morning sun that comes in my windows. And right now in Philly, it's like cool. We haven't totally switched over to autumn yet, but it's still nice to like sleep with the windows open and just like a light sheet at night, which is the best to wake up in the morning like that with this like cool breeze coming in. And my cat is usually like curled up around my feet in this like fuzzy little ball in this like little nest. And I have this like beautiful like Swiss cheese monstera plant that sits at the foot of the bed too. And the light hits it really nice. So it makes it feel really nice when I wake up in the morning, like not jarred. And I have my medicine next to the bed that I take right when I wake up, and always my water bottle, my trusty cantaloupe themed water bottle. I love cantaloupe these days. So it's green. And in the morning, I don't know if this is TMI.
No, this is fantastic.
Very regular bowel movements. And so that's usually the first thing that I do.
Awesome.
I get right out of bed and I have to like run to the restroom because I'm like, I've got to pee. And when I'm on the commode, I don't know if Americans say that very much these days. I'm often on Instagram. So I'm looking at messages that my friends have sent me on my Finsta. And then I usually sometimes I'll have these like 1 hour spurt where I've created 10 Instagram tiles on Canva. And I kind of like just sit on this little like treasure pile. And then when I'm on the commode, I pick like, oh, what do I want to write about today? What am I feeling like inspired to write about? And so I'll pick one, and I might like start a draft. And
so you've got the tile ready with an idea before you write the caption.
Before I write the caption, because oftentimes in session, I'll have like this light bulb, and I like scribble down the little great tile thing that I want it to say. And then we'll think about a caption later on. And while I'm like thinking about the caption stuff, I'll jot down like 2 or 3 main ideas that I want the caption to come across. And then I'll write underneath each of those 2 or 3 ideas, because it can't be too long. Caption doesn't have too much space in there. And I know that for Instagram, it's really good for our algorithm to add stuff to the story every day. It keeps us like boosted in the lineup of accounts that have interesting content. I don't know. It's good for the algorithm. I try to post 15 to 20 images that I reshared from other therapist accounts or like recovery accounts or like political accounts or organizers and things like that. And I try to connect one image to the next idea. Or sometimes the story for the day might have a broad theme. Or like 3 in a row will have a theme, and then the next 3, and then the next 2, like that. And I often move from my bedroom. I don't go back into my bedroom because my bedroom is just for sleeping. So I don't like to do work on there. I don't eat in there. And I make the bed right away before I get out of the bed. Because when I was young, my dad told me that it's like a superstition, but it's like if you leave your bed not made, a ghost is going to come sleep in it.
Oh,
And I'm very afraid of ghosts. So I make it right away before I leave. And then usually I'll sit on my couch, which is like the cozy center of my apartment, because my apartment is like longer than it is wide.
mm-hmm.
So I get really great light on both ends and like a little bit less in the middle. So
Me
it's like
too.
cool, right?
Yeah.
Cool and cave-like. So I'll sit on the couch. I might even take a nap for like 30 minutes because I've woken up so early before work. And I'll write my caption, or I'll start a draft, or I'll have too much negative self-talk and I won't post the caption, but I'll have some tidbits of a draft. And I'll like pack my lunch for the day. And I typically see about 5 to 6 clients a day, usually not more than 7 or 8. That feels like too many. And typically within a week, I feel like most of my clients I see on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And then I try to keep Thursdays and Fridays sparse because it's nice to have a light end of the week. And I feel like I've gotten over the hump and now I can like relax a little, maybe even sleep in on Thursday a little more or Friday a little more if I want to catch up on sleep. And I do not work weekends. That's like one boundary that I've set for myself. And I've been trying to do the work of having my calendar reflect the values of who I want to like fill my time in my life, and like almost like the things that you pay attention to grow, like the things you pay attention to in your garden are the things that grow. And so I want to have really fulfilling friendships, and I live this very fulfilled single person life with many of my queer family who are also in therapy, and we'll have dinner together and talk about our therapeutic insights together, and the challenges of dating, and the challenges of dating while fat, and having dinner parties and game nights, and going to art openings, and buying plants, and picking up paint colors, and hanging up art on the walls, and so that's the kind of stuff that I like to do on the evenings or weekends.
Beautiful. And that makes me think about anti-capitalism again when you name those things.
How do we live like fulfilling lives where we're surviving capitalism, not as capitalists, but as like building lives that feel like outside of survival mode, but in like thriving mode?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So if you could time travel to the start of your business, and really, I know you've kind of got 2 businesses here, but if you could, travel back to the beginning of all of that, what would you tell the Sonalee of that time? And like one, I think we talked about this before, like one piece of advice that's more tactical and one that's more mindset oriented.
The mindset one comes to me way easier than the tactical. And the mindset one is to not be so afraid. So something that I struggle with is goal setting. And that's because when I was really young, goal setting was always involved weight loss and trying new fad diets, which always failed because 95 to 97% of diets do not work. They're not successful. And so I have this difficulty in like dreaming big. And my business partner is an Aries. And so she dreams big. And she's also got 10 years more experience on me. So she's just been around the block and like knows what practices can evolve to. And I'm a lot newer. I'm a lot greener in my therapeutic practice. I've only been out of school for 3 years. And I just wanted to have our little 2-office building for like 3 years and then consider building and expanding, at a slow, gradual pace. But Kala was like, no, I want to have paid social work interns, and I want to have LSWs working under us who want to politicize their therapy, and I want to make sure that we have only queer and trans therapists of color who are like reaping a lot of these benefits of like how we nurture and raise young clinicians. And I want to make sure that our building is wheelchair accessible, and I want to make sure that we have free spaces for communities to come and use our group rooms as needed. And I was like fearful. I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I have enough emotional energy to work with people who are not paying me to work with them as therapeutic clients. I have a lot of fear around like working too much and like being protective of my me time. But I was too afraid. I was like too afraid of succeeding. I was like too afraid of meeting my community's needs. And that's still something that I struggle with. But I think I've come a long way in the last 9 months. And tactical, I would say the one thing that we're doing differently is changing our LLC over to an S corp. And that's something we're doing with the help of an accountant here in Philadelphia. And so that's something that I don't know if that would have been helpful for beginning business me to know, but maybe I had to take that one back.
But it's good to know now.
It's good to know now. I think it's helpful for anyone to be able to identify, do I want to work in solo practice or group practice? And if you are choosing group practice, then it's helpful to know that S corp might be the way that you want to go, especially if insurance is really important. So we have clinicians who require really expensive medications and need good insurance. So it's very important for us ethically to be able to provide that for folks who are going to work with us.
So anything else that you want to leave us with before we have to wrap up?
I keep coming back to your question about capitalism because I feel like it's super complex depending on our positionality, how we like relate to that larger question of like our body's ability to be profitable under capitalism. Like I grew up as a middle class kid and my family has now risen to upper middle class status. And I walk through the world with a lot of privilege in that sense. Like if something were to happen, I can fall back on the safety net of my family's wealth. I have access to that if I need it. And when I think about my anti-capitalism politic with that financial privilege, I think about the intentional redistribution of wealth as something that's really important, not just of me to do personally and individually, but also for me to ask for my parents to do. And that doesn't mean that wherever they're donating their money is cool, because I know the places that they're donating their money to are not places that I would donate my money to. And I'm talking about like Hindu supremacist, Islamophobic, like trash bag orgs that funnel their money back into the settler Indian state in really bad ways. So when I ask for money from them, it is for the organizers who I talk to on Instagram who are struggling with different medical procedures or wanting top surgery or needing help paying their, not student loan, like I'm struggling with the word. They need help, they need financial help. And I have access to providing it in these like micro ways. So I think about intentional redistribution. I think about also making sure that we offer accessible ways to receive our services. So I recently published that I'll be offering a queer and trans fat positive virtual support group. And yeah, I'm like really excited, a little nervous because I haven't done them virtually before. But when I announced how much it costs, and I had said it's $339 over the course of 3 months, folks were immediately posting in the comments like, whoa, that's really expensive for me. I could never afford that. And what happened was a different follower had posted, well, we could fundraise a fund for you to be able to provide scholarships. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I had not considered that. So it's something great for us to remember when we're constructing an event like that, that we want everyone to be able to access, to maybe offer a fund that folks can donate to, or that we can put funds in if we have the access and the means, so that folks could have stipends or scholarships to be able to come in.
Awesome. I love how you're like with all of these things, you're thinking about your micro decisions in a macro way. Well, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate our conversation.
It's such an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. You can learn more from Sonalee on Instagram at The Fat Sex Therapist. You can also reach out to her at sonaleer.com. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing and Brianne Rising for caring for our amazing guests. If you found this episode supportive, please do us a big favor and rate us or review us on iTunes. Your 5-star review helps other therapists and healers find us and get our support. I'll see you next time.